The judgment, in my legal opinion, is absurd. The majority has retained, chosen to maintain silence. And I was, quite disturbed. So all we can say is try and stay on the right side of the government, and maybe you'll stay safe. Hope that nobody in government or in the establishment dislikes you, because otherwise, you'll be locked up. If merely retweeting, somebody else's tweet amounts to a criminal offense, then, there's really no end to it. If you criminalize them, then, I mean, you've really taken away the entire freedom of speech.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Usama Khilji back with another episode of Digipod on DawnNews English. Today, we're going to be talking about a very pertinent matter, something that has been relevant to us over the past few years, which is the Peca law and online speech in Pakistan, and what the implications of this law are on online speech. Specifically, we'll be talking about Section 26A, which was added to this law in January of 2025, exactly a year ago. And in this, Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, we've seen a lot of various cases that have been filed against journalists, against activists, and generally against internet users. So it's very important for us to be aware of what the PICA law is, how it regulates online speech, what the criminal penalties could be. And in particular, we'll be talking about the conviction of human rights lawyers Imaan Mazari and Hadi Chattha, who were sentenced to over 17 years in total in jail, with a 10-year total sentence if you look at it running concurrently, and rupees 36 million rupees in fine. So we're joined today by Salahuddin Ahmed, who's an advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. He's also a member of the Pakistan Bar Council. Thank you very much for joining us, Salahuddin, today. We're very looking forward to hearing your expertise on this law. So
Thank you
just
for
to
having me.
start, thank you. So to start, I think maybe you can tell our audience a bit about what PICA is, why does it exist, and how Section 26A particularly fits into the law.
Pika was introduced in 2016 uh, under the PMLN government, and its purpose was to regulate online speech. There was, of course, laws PEMRA was regulating speech that was on, conventional electronic media. There wasn't a specific law in relation to social media, and particularly in the original focus, although the law kind of morphed. The original focus was of the law was on stuff like hacking, unauthorized intrusions into databases, etc.
So
All that kind of stuff.
cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity, right? And there were, provisions relating to online pornography, etc. There was, sections relating to cyberterrorism and things like that. And I mean, it was, of course, that there was a vacuum in the law in relation to that. So there was a need for an Electronic Crimes Act. But over the years, we've seen that the law has kind of morphed from one relating to cybersecurity and cyber crimes to actually a law that allows the state to weaponize the act in relation to online speech. So you've had there were amendments subsequently during the PTI government, and then again in this PMLN government, again there were further amendments, and at every stage we've seen the cybersecurity aspect of it take a backseat, and all the new amendments tend to focus primarily on regulating online speech and criminalizing various aspects of it. Section 26A is just one part of it. There was, for example, Section 20 of Peca, which used to be offenses, against the against the dignity of a natural person, right? And that was basically meant to, in its original version, it was meant to cover things like when people, take photographs, unauthorized photographs, or they, morph those pictures, or and they share them online, etc. So it was meant originally to be about that. Eventually, it became, and it also used to require that the affectee, the victim, personally file a complaint before a
Exactly.
magistrate about that. What they eventually changed it to was basically a kind of a defamation law, right? A criminal defamation law. So if anybody feels that they've been insulted, or, there have been derogatory remarks about them, they don't even have to go to court anymore. Now it's been made a cognizable offense. And previously the FIA, and now the National Cybercrime Agency, so long as if you have enough influence over there, they'll, start criminal proceedings against you, and, you have to run for bail or face arrest. So that's a way which, commonly we've seen public officials
Mm,
with access to the federal agencies weaponize that against criticism of them online. Similarly, Section 26A that speaks about anybody who spreads fake information, fake or false information online, with an intent to create fear, unrest, or disorder. Now, the thing is that obviously, whether something is fake or not, the falsity of some information, I mean, that will obviously be proved one way or the other in trial, right? And the intent to create disorder or unrest, now, that is such a vague and amorphous kind of concept, unrest. It could be anything. And we've seen in, the Imaan Mazari and Hadi Chattha case that, it can be just applied to any kind of thing. That, well, by saying this, by making some kind of, allegation against the government, or any agency of the government, you can quite plausibly make out a case. Well, you're spreading unrest against the government. This We say that this news or this report is false, and therefore you're liable to criminal proceedings. And even if, I mean, Iman's case is, of course, a very extreme example where a conviction was handed out, 17-year sentence was awarded. But even if actual convictions don't take place, just knowing that, you could be suddenly targeted with criminal proceedings by a federal investigation, an agency responsible for that, that has a chilling effect on online speech generally.
absolutely. And I think it's this aspect of it, of this conviction, that is so concerning because, as the Constitution's Article 19A says, every citizen has the freedom of speech. There's freedom, which is guaranteed. But in practice, we're seeing that that is extremely limited and being largely diminished by the day. So, in the conviction of Iman and Hadi, we've seen how 26A was applied in addition to other sections like Section 9 and 10 related to cyber terrorism. So how does that work? How can online speech be equated with cyber terrorism, and such a conviction happen? Like in your view, is this something that's within the ambit of the Peca law?
Right. So the charges against them were, as far as I recall, under Section 9 and 10 of PICA and Section 26A, right? And Section 9, if I recall correctly, is relates to glorification of, terrorism or a proscribed person. So, in relation to that, the trial court judge Afzal Manjoka held that because they had shared some tweets, sent by Marang Baloch, therefore, and they had, tweeted in some places that, the state should negotiate with the families of missing persons rather than, punishing them. So they said that this amounts to, the judge said that this amounts to glorifying terrorism, and cyber terrorism was also held to be proved as part of that same, on the same tweets, that this is creating fear and unrest and panic in society by when you make statements against, because there were some tweets in which the role of the army had been criticized. So they said that this amounts to cyber terrorism. And then the third aspect of it was, they made tweets for, in fact, not, I don't think Hadi had sent any of those tweets, but I think Iman had sent a tweet in which it was said that, the state is still continuing this good Taliban, bad Taliban policy. There were some tweets saying that the state is continuing to operate on this good Taliban, bad Taliban policy, and terrorists responsible for murdering our children. I assume the reference was to Ehsanullah Ehsan. They somehow were let go. Whereas, action keeps on taking place against, families of missing persons, etc. So that was held to be, an example of fake news and something that would spread dissatisfaction and unrest against state institutions.
I think it's very concerning because, as you describe it, these are analysis of political events that were being posted on Twitter or on X, but their analyses have been deemed to be, equated with cyber terrorism and glorification of offenses, as well as sharing of false information. So, how does this risk free speech in Pakistan overall? Seeing as we are a very political country, the commentary on social media on politics is so robust at all times, and there's so many political events happening. Um, in your view, what is the effect this will have on people who want to speak? And if you could also touch upon the fact that Hadi Ali Chattha didn't post any of these tweets. His only, the accusation against him is that of retweeting or reposting them. So how does that fare for internet users in Pakistan in general?
Now, on Twitter, bios, you often see people write on it, just because retweets do not mean I endorse, the original tweet's position. And that is pretty much the way the platform works, right? You share all, the tweets shared by different people. Sometimes you agree with them, sometimes you don't. If merely retweeting, somebody else's tweet amounts to a criminal offense, then there's really no end to it. The other thing is that if the logic that um, Judge Afzal Manjoka subscribes to, if that is accepted, right? If the person who actually shares an online view has to prove the authenticity and the truth of the allegation, and if he fails to do so, then he can be convicted, under Section 26A. So the logical result is, let's say, if, I mean, this case is very sensitive because, the military is considered to be involved. But let's say if I was to tweet that the present Sindh police is thoroughly corrupt and, no one can trust them, right? Um, would that mean now, and I can't actually prove any elements of corruption, right? Personally, I can't. I don't have any documentary. Does that mean that I have shared fake information that tends to promote unrest or disaffection, against a state institution? What if I say it about the government that, or the parliament, that they're a bunch of thieves, you know? Um, is every commentator going to be asked to prove the allegation of theft? I mean, these are things that are part of public discourse. If you criminalize them, then I mean, you've really taken away the entire freedom of speech. There is no way to be able to do politics. There's no way to be able to do political commentary. I mean, right now, there's in Karachi, there's been the Gul Plaza incident, right? You see everybody talking about it. Someone's blaming the local government, someone's blaming the Sindh government. So if all of these things are going to be, if they can potentially be criminalized, the only reason that people, I mean, and at least in the Sindh government, there haven't been many actions under Peca, but I understand in the Punjab government, for actually criticizing the chief minister and the government, there have been cases against Peca. So basically, under Peca against those people. So basically, you end any kind of democratic expression of views.
Absolutely. And I think it's also a case of selective enforcement because we see that the NCCIA is thoroughly understaffed. There's a lot of issues with, how this case was investigated, and also due process concerns about how this trial went on. So, what do you see the future appeal in the high court? Do you think that in this case this sentence will be overturned or has the potential to be overturned? And will that sort of, how will that fare for the general freedom of speech situation in Pakistan?
The judgment, in my legal opinion, is absurd. Um, Luckily, I mean, previously there wasn't any reporting about the actual tweets in question, but the judgment reproduces them. I think there are about 13 or 14 tweets, of which the 13 or 14 tweets of Iman's, I think Hadi's has retweeted, I think maybe three or four of them. None of those tweets make out any case under Section 9, under Section 10, under Section 26A. They just don't fit the ingredients, right? Then there is, of course, the absurdity of which was, publicly reported. where there was a tweet saying that Pakistan is acting like our establishment is acting like a terrorist state if it's supporting, if it's letting terrorists, some kinds of terrorists go, and some it's taking actions against others. So it was part of that whole comment. So you know if the judge then writes, everyone knows that there are only four terrorist states, and that is North Korea, Iran, and Syria, and one other, I think Libya, perhaps. These are the official four terrorist states, and Pakistan is not a terrorist state, and this should have been known to the lawyers. And then obviously he had to backtrack on that because we maintain friendly diplomatic relations with all those countries, and some of them complained. So and even that was completely illegal, because once you've passed a judgment, you can't then just call it back and make changes to it as you like. That tends to show that the entire reasoning on the basis of which the conviction and the sentence was passed down, that has become weak. So under any in any court where law is actually being applied, the sentence and the conviction should be set aside. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not convinced that even in our higher courts, in our apex courts, whether law is the only consideration.
Yes, and that's the trust in the judiciary is a matter of concern. And you've recently been elected to the Pakistan Bar Council, which represents lawyers from across the country. And we know that in this case, the bar has also been involved. But this particular Peca case concerns two lawyers who are members of the bar. And the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers has also commented against this conviction. So, in terms of PICA being used against lawyers and such sentences being passed on, how's the lawyer committee, how's the lawyer community reacting? And do you see a role for the bar to sort of take this issue up conclusively so that other lawyers don't end up behind bars like Iman and Hadi have?
So I think there are some bar associations, bar councils that have vocally spoken up against it. The Sindh High Court Bar has the Sindh Bar Council, Balochistan Bar Council, the Lahore High Court Bar, the Islamabad Bar. Um, some, unfortunately, in the Pakistan Bar Council, eight of us issued a statement, condemning it. The majority has chosen to maintain silence. And I was, quite disturbed. I saw the other day that the president of the Supreme Court Bar Association actually said that, if anyone speaks against the idare, then action will be taken. And, he was basically justifying the verdict. I think that
I
is
believe he also admitted that he hasn't read the judgment. And despite that, this comment was passed.
so I just find this to be such a fantastically short-sighted approach, right? I mean, it happens. I mean, we have a polarized society. People support one party or the other. Even the bar is divided, the same way the country as a whole is. But I think for any kind of professional body, concerned with the administration of justice, for it to justify such egregious, violations of law, for it to justify, the weaponization of law to punish lawyers from free speech, to justify these kind of draconian sentences, to not have any concern about what happens tomorrow. I mean, we've
Hmm.
seen, Peca laws, the PMLN, as I said earlier, the PMLN government brought it in. When the PTI government was in power, they used Peca laws against, not only PMLN leaders, but, journalists who
Hmm.
were perceived to be supportive of PMLN. Um, Now we see the reversal. Anyone who is, perceived to be against the present political government, gets visited with, PICA FIRs. And I mean, this just keeps on getting worse. And I don't see how any lawyer's body can be okay with it. So I'm quite disappointed at the role of the Supreme Court bar in particular, and even the silence of the Pakistan Bar Council in general on this issue. I think when lawyers are targeted by the deep state in this way, it's the duty of the bars to speak up.
No, thank you for sharing that because it's interesting how this has panned out. I would like to end by asking you a bit about, the future moving forward with the PICA law. Do we envision it being used the way it has been further? And secondly, what should internet users know or be wary of when using the internet or social media moving forward, keeping in mind such sentences?
See, the as far as what how this law is going to be used, I mean, the state has telegraphed the way it is going to be used. As far as what precautions one can take, the thing with these kind of laws, when you make them so vague, and you intentionally make them vague
Hmm.
and amorphous, so that you can use them against people you don't like, right?
Hmm.
And anything, even the most innocuous kind of, I mean, this thing, for example, saying that Pakistan is wrongly continuing a good Taliban, bad Taliban policy. I've heard hundreds of, if not thousands of people talk about it. There have been articles written about it. Or this, for example, that how did Ehsan miraculously escape, from the safe house that he was being kept and landed up in Turkey, right? I mean, that those are questions that thousands of people have asked, right? And they're important questions to be asked and answered. Now, because you have such a vague law that could potentially be used against anyone, so it's really, I mean, the entire certainty of law goes, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you want laws where you can actually advise people that look, if you do this, it's a crime. If you say this, it's okay. Unfortunately, our judiciary has collaborated with our establishment in a way to make the certainty of law just a complete fiction, right? So all we can say is try and stay on the right side of the government, and maybe you'll stay safe. Hope that nobody in government or in the establishment dislikes you, because otherwise, you'll be locked up, and our judiciary will, be part of that, collusion.
That's a grim reminder. And thank you so much, Salahuddin, for talking to us and being with us today to discuss PICA, to discuss the new sections that were added last year, but also overall to talk about the conviction of human rights lawyers under the law. Now, with Pica's 10 years having passed, we've seen that such convictions are taking place of journalists are also under threat, lawyers are under threat. But it's very, very important for us to A, be aware of what the laws are, but B, for people to collectively have discussions around how we can have, as Salaudin mentioned, certainty of the law, and also have a law that is just and administered in a way that is fair and proportionate. It's also important to keep in mind that Pakistan has various international commitments, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which includes a lot of the fundamental rights that are guaranteed by the Pakistani constitution. And our commitments internationally also are being held to account. We have the Universal Periodic Review with the United Nations, and we also have the European Union Treaty on GSP Plus, where we get trade preferential tariffs for trade with the European Union, which is the largest market for Pakistani exports. And in order to maintain that, there has to be improvement in the human rights situation. So overall, we believe that. Overall, I think discussions around Peca are important, but having seen this case, it's also very important to use the internet in a way that such a conviction cannot land any other people in trouble, keeping in mind the precedent that this case has set. So thank you very much for joining us at DigiPod. I'm Usama Khilji signing out. See you next week on DawnNews English.